Excited to be in the studio this morning with Dr. Cree Johnson. She's a jack of all trades, but recently released a book called The 10 Commandments of the Working Wife.
So just to you, be encouraged and know that whatever that dream is, whatever that goal is that you have been believing God for, we kind of have to go where they're taking you. You go, get what you got to do, and yes, you can bring that resource back or stay where you are. It's all on you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Wells with Executive Lives, Living Life on Purpose.
And I'm Matt Wilson, and the goal of this show is to sit down with successful people that also live a life of purpose. We want people to tell their stories, we want you to be encouraged, and ultimately, we want you to know how they were able to walk through some of the most difficult things in their lives and come out stronger on the other side. Faith plays a strong role, and you're going to continue to see that theme throughout the series.
And so we're here with Dr. Cree Johnson now. She practices family medicine at the St. Vincent's East Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama. She received her medical degree from Kansas City University in medicine and biosciences and has a special interest in the mentally challenged. Now, Dr. Cree is also a highly successful businesswoman creating a personal coaching business designed to help working wives and mothers achieve balance. Now, she wrote the book, 10 Commandments of a Working Wife, and was featured on the show Talk of Alabama and is in Reader's Digest and Bustle. Now, she has a Facebook Live series, so go check it out, entitled Dr. Cree and Me, where she talks about the common medical diseases. She's a highly sought-after speaker, and on top of all of that, she provides personal concierge medicine. So she lives in Birmingham with her husband, Jay Johnson. And if you don't know him, check him out. He was actually our second interviewee, owner of College Prep U, and in fact had talked a lot about how a supportive wife really kind of helps keep things aligned. So be sure to check it out. Go back, and we may even be putting it up later on. So also, they have a beautiful daughter named Zoe. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of things that you're doing, and I enjoy following you on social media and getting to know you guys, and but keeping up with everything that you are doing, it's I know everybody on this show has a lot of things going on, and we've all got different ways that we manage that. Starting out, not having as much to keep up with. It's easier to develop a balance and routine, but as you get busier, how do you come up with that balance?
So the big thing that in our household, we have a schedule. We're very regimented, and we have a 4-year-old, Zoe's 4, and when Jay used to be on the road a lot, so he worked away before he started his own business. So we kind of had very strict, and then Daddy came home, and then life was like a party. We had a big party, and it's like, okay, now we got to get back on track. So for us, we stick to a schedule. She's 4, she's learned how to tell time, so she's like, the clock says 7:10. I think we're running late, so we kind of keep a strict schedule. She goes to bed at 7:30. We every night, no matter what, and we make sure that after that we have our time together. We have our long time, we have our together time, and for us, sticking with a schedule equates to adding more balance. If you can stay on track, then it actually adds more time to your day instead of being aimless.
Were you always like this? I mean, because when you're in high school and you just always, well, some people stay really busy, sometimes people are really lazy, but it's like, how do you maintain the extreme? So when you were in high school and then you went to college, you went to med school, we all know that's a very, 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 very busy time of your life. So did you learn that during then? Like, take us through the time where you went from college to med school, then to meeting Jay. Like, how did you manage all of that?
Well, I am actually the daughter of a preacher. My parents are educators, right? So they both teach. My mom's a principal now. So we are really educated, church center people. So we had super busy schedules. My dad was a coach. My mom was a coach. My dad preached. We were going somewhere all the time. So we had to learn the art of a balance and the need of a schedule. We was going to bed at 9:30, even in the 11th grade, So we had
11th grade? No.
You're like, no.
It's like your childhood. It's gone.
It's gone. So I took a lot of that kicking and screaming in high school, but it was really beneficial for me in college. I went to Spelman College in Atlanta. Of course, Jay went to Morehouse. We didn't know each other then. We didn't meet each other until after I actually finished school in Spelman. But all of that being said, Spelman is one of the biggest colleges in producing African American women doctors.
Okay.
So from there, I was told I had a hard time taking tests. So I could make the great grades in school, but I could not ace the MCAT. And the MCAT is what you need to take to get into medical school. So I remember talking to people and consulting and was told, like, you'll never be able to go to medical school because your scores aren't good enough. And I'm like, no, I've been wanting to be a doctor since I was 4 years old.
Right.
And I don't want to do anything else. So before I got into medical school, I had to teach for a semester.
Okay.
My parents are teachers. I don't want to have anything to do with teaching. Nothing against teachers. We love teachers. We need them. But I didn't want to teach.
Right.
And my mom was like, you can do it. I'm going to show you how to be a mean teacher. So for a semester, I went to another rural school called Newbern High School, Sunshine High School in Newbern, Alabama, and taught 7th, 8th, and 9th grade science. It was great, but I was so happy when it was over. So during that time, I actually got into medical school. A doctor in Selma told me about Kansas City, and they have a pipeline to bring more doctors to Alabama. So this was perfect. So they looked at all of my tests and gave the average of the best score. So I looked pretty good when you took the best one, and that one. So I got into school and was able to come back. But med school is no joke. You have to have balance. You have to be able to have a good schedule, and I just kind of stuck with it. You study for 3-4 hours straight, take a break, go back at it. So a lot of the balance and the structure that I had came from having probably a rigorous childhood, honestly.
That's good. But, I think that it's important for people to take something very, something that you just said is extremely critical to success and development. There are going to be people that support you, and there are going to be people that tell you that you can't do something.
You can't do it.
And, the power of words is extremely strong. I know that we're brought up and we're taught, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
It's not true.
But that's not true. I believe that the tongue is the most powerful weapon or muscle in the body because it has the ability to speak life or death. And, so you could have heard those words in somebody speaking over you that you'll never be able to get into medical school. But instead, you said, I'm not going to hear that. I'm going to continue to persevere and I'm going to move forward. I know that you're a very spiritual person. How did your faith play a role in, hearing those words that you're never going to be capable of doing something that you'd wanted to do since you were 4 years old? Mm-hmm. How did that empower you and how did that get you through that time where originally that door was closed?
Right. It was really tough, but my gift is discernment and prayer. So I did a lot of praying, a lot of praying, and just kind of standing at his feet and just listening at the voice of God. And I didn't hear God telling me that I was going to be a teacher forever, which I thought that equated being miserable. I'm like, no, that's not what I heard. And so I just kind of kept at it. It meant being uncomfortable. It meant if I was going to go where he said for me to go, that meant I had to leave Alabama. And I've always wanted to be closer to home. My parents are in Marion still, which is one of the smallest, poorest counties in, Perry County is one of the poor counties in Alabama. So they're still there. They're still, grassroots doing what they have to do there. So I wanted to be closer to them, but it meant I had to go to Spelman. From Spelman, I went to Illinois, did a 2-year program there, and finally got into med school. So I really knew that was something that I felt God was telling me, and discernment has always been my thing. So I'm like, I hear you. I know what the paper says, but that paper and those words aren't as big as my God. Mm-hmm. So I just went with that, and I just went wherever he said to go. And it snowed everywhere I went, and I hated snow. And I was like, Lord, if you just get me from Kansas City, I promise I'll never come back because I don't want to die in the snow, that kind of thing. So I did a lot of bargaining, like, hey, we're going to get through this, God, and I'll just go back and I'll help everybody now. And just let's do that,
right.
Whatever. So I just really stuck with it, and I felt like it was my call, and I felt like healing was my thing. And, every day I pray that I have healing hands, and my hands are anointed. And I just went with that. And I just feel so happy that I did, because now I'm able to bless other women, working women, other people that are trying to get in school, and encourage them that if they don't give up, that they will, succeed in the end if you go wherever you have to go to get there. So it's not easy, but you have to just do it.
Where did you get that passion, that drive?
I think from my parents. I got these.
They're always busy. You just
They
have
were
to stay
always
busy,
busy,
huh?
so I had to stay busy. But I think that growing up, my dad started preaching when I was probably about 2 years old. I got a picture of him walking up the steps into the church to do his first sermon. And I had on this rat of a coat. And I was, I was stylish about 2, and I was walking in his footsteps up into the church, and I was looking back. So that has always been something. And they just encouraged me. They knew what the paper said, and they were like, well, if she says she's going to Carbondale, Illinois, where no one is, we don't want her to go, but they went with it. They supported me, and I think that was a lot of it. They encouraged us to do our daily bread when we were young. They encouraged us to read the Bible in a year, whatever. They just encouraged us a lot to stick with it, and I did. I listened. I wasn't that kid. It was like, oh, let me just be that PK and stray and do. I was like, no, I want to go to heaven. I'm just stay on this straight and narrow. I'm gonna do what I got to do. So that's kind of what I was scared. So I just did the right thing.
Fear drives us, doesn't
I was
it?
scared straight. I'm just on the straight and narrow.
Well, I think that knowing who God says we are versus what the world says we are, I think that's extremely important.
Yeah.
And whenever we're pursuing something that we feel like He's placed in our heart, it ultimately doesn't matter that the initial outcomes that we receive, because if we know that He's called us to be more than our current circumstance, then that can allow us to walk through whatever. But ultimately we've got to take the steps. He can give us the guidance and call us certain places, but He's exactly. So with that, you decided to not only go into medicine, but start doing all of these different things. You could have just said, all right, I want to be a doctor and become a doctor and been successful and make a lot of money. But ultimately, you're doing so much more than just that. You're trying to guide women. You're trying to guide wives. Where does that come from? What's your why behind doing all that?
So my why behind all of that is from personal experience. I started my practice in 2012 in August, and we got married September 1st. Whoever thought that was a good idea? It sounded so good at that time, but it was horrible. Yeah. So I was in private practice, so that was like a marriage, a baby, all in itself that I was having to focus on. And then he was there, and I'm like, well, you grown, you can figure it out. You can warm me up some hot dogs or whatever. Right. So I really didn't have the right. I wanted to be a wife, and a lot of times people do. You want that, you want the marriage, you want all that comes with it, but do you want the work that comes with it? It's so much work. And so about 7 months into it, I've been working 7 days a week because I had to see patients in the hospital. I had to see patients before I went to work, when I went to work, at the lunch hour. So I was like gone all the time. And he was like, well, do you plan on cooking? You used to cook. You used to cook. And I was like, well, maybe I should, and then one day I walked out of my clinic, and there was a doctor sitting there. He was like, it's time. I was like, it's time for what? He was like, it's time for you to give me your hospital patients. You don't need to be working as much. I was like, did you talk to my husband? And he was like, no, I didn't talk to your husband. I was like, okay. So at that point, God started to open up these doors for me to have relief. And I was trying to do it in my own strength, which a lot of other working wives and moms try and do. Like, well, I feel like I have to do all these things to make it successful, that I lose sight of me, that I lose sight of my husband. And then maybe 5 minutes later, we got pregnant. So it was so hard because I'm trying to figure out how to keep her alive, and then I'm still not paying him any attention because you can do for yourself. Right. You're so grown, and she is so little. 10 months after she was born, I look up and I'm like, and who is this person? Who is he? And where have you been? He had been nowhere, but I didn't know him and he didn't know me. So it was like, at that point, we started going through all of these turmoil because I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been married a year. Are we going to divorce after a year because I'm not paying attention to him, and somebody else, if you don't pay attention and water your flowers, somebody else will. Mm-hmm. And so we just kind of had to take a step back and say, yes, we want our marriage to work, but we have to put in the time. I have to put the same effort that I'm putting into Brownstone into my marriage. So my why is my marriage and my daughter and keeping us all in one cohesive unit. So I see women all the time and they're broken. They have the superwoman complex. Like to call it, and they're like doing everything for everybody, but they're sick. They have high blood pressure. They have diabetes. They're depressed. They're anxious, and it's showing in their job performance. But they still want to be the top. They want to be the VP. They want to be the head of this. And you're like, girl, do you see how you look? Your nails not done, your hair not done. You just, and the inside's messed up. So I start seeing this over and over and over again, which was why I was like, okay, the book would be great, because I can use this as a resource to these women that I'm seeing, and it can help them to not have to lose their marriages, because sometimes marriages fail not because you want it to, because you don't think it's any other way. So that's where my own life was the main blueprint, but watching this happen over and over and over again was a big thing.
We see this is a common thing in a lot of business people, if you notice. So you decided to go the route of the marriage, but if you ever get to know a lot of executives, a lot of business owners, they get to grow their business, and it's an interesting ride, because when you're in business, it's not like you can just put the phone down, and people think you can just put the phone down or it'll wait. I used to have people say, it'll be there tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, it'll be there tomorrow, just 10 times worse. And when you get through that 10 times worse a few times, you're very motivated to just get it done now. And I remember being on dates, and I would have a phone call, and you can't date anymore. And so like that kind of stuff,
It affects your whole life.
It messes you up. But there is a point at which a lot of people don't know this until after everything is gone. But you recognized it early. Some people, even if they recognize it, they don't choose it. They rather get to the top. They rather be the best. They rather do whatever it is, and whatever is around them that relies on them, they don't care. They just let them go. They say, well, we'll see what happens, which is kind of sad, because why would you work so hard for a marriage, or so hard for relationships, so hard for all your friends, and develop that, and then finally have it, and then all of a sudden after something else is taking a little bit of your time, you're willing to just give it all up and start that process over again. I still don't understand why people do that, but because your business and your career is not going to be crying at your funeral. So my question to you in this case is, like, as many people have some people they don't realize it, and then it goes, and then they lose it. Some people realize it and they say, well, we'll see what happens. And then some people do what you do, which is, I'm going to choose my marriage, I'm going to choose this, I'm going to figure out how to go all in on that. First, how did you recognize that you were in that position? And then two, what made you decide that this is what you want to do?
Well, my parents have been married for like 37 years. So all I saw was a normal, what we see on TV. Okay, mom, dad, some kids. But his family wasn't like that. His mom got married later he was out of the house. I think he was maybe in college. So we had these two different views of what we saw every day is marriage. So all I saw was success, and I know what the Bible says about marriage, and I know what the devil says about marriage. So I'm like, oh my gosh, the devil has got me. He's got me. And I just want to work. I love to work. I can find something to do at work. I can go at 7. I can stay at 7. He's like, if something happened to me, you move a bed in here, a TV in here. I'm like, yes, there's always something to do. So I was able to just kind of step back and see it through his eyes, because he was complaining the whole time. I just didn't hear him, because I'm like, no, I got to go. I need to see 15 people a day. I need to do this. I need to do that. You have these goals that you may not articulate to anyone else. But he's looking at me like I'm crazy, and I'm just going, and forgetting about everything else. And it wasn't until I had Zoe. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to just raise her by myself, I don't want her in that situation where we have to split time. And so I'm like, wow. And we hadn't been married long. It was like a year and a half into our marriage. We got all this stuff so fast that we didn't really have time to invest in ourselves. Now, we traveled a lot, we did a lot, but I was doing way too much with my business. And that just kind of helped me to having her and looking at things through, what would this look like to her? How would this hurt her in the long run? It made my decision easier because I didn't want to be selfish and not think about her. So I'm like, okay, a girl needs her dad. A girl needs she needs to see this. So that made my decision easier.
So you've been married 5 years. We've been married 11 and a half. It'll be 12 years in June. And for anybody out there that's watching that thinks that marriage is easy, or that there are perfect marriages out there, that is a myth. That is a lie. Hollywood makes it romance. You get swept away, and there's love, there's lust. It's all fun and passion and this, that, and the other. But the reality is there can be those things, but also there's got to be work. And and just like your business, just like your career, just like raising children. I mean, your marriage has to be poured into, and
you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right. And so for me, I ended up having to have somebody speak into my marriage, and that was 2015. That ultimately I realized that I wasn't doing everything that I was supposed to be doing as a man, as a husband, as a father. And that led to a closer relationship with God for me. But ultimately I had to recognize that I wasn't doing everything that I was supposed to do. I'm still not perfect, and I never will be. But having that recognition that we are called to serve our spouse, we are called to love our spouse and take care of and be there for our spouse. Losing the selfishness and being more selfless is definitely something that we've all got to work on. But one of the things that really helped me in my marriage was ultimately drawing closer. The people that guided us said, draw closer to God, and then draw closer to each other, and then everything else will take care of itself. And is that something that you guys found? I know that you guys pray together. I know that y'all are again very spiritual. How do y'all handle that aspect of the marriage, and how have you seen all of the improvement from that?
Yes, I have. When we first got married, Jay was like, "Oh, let's date." I was like, "You need to live on Jesus." It's like, what? I've never been turned down. Well, you turned down today. So that was like 2 weeks. Then we met back up maybe 2 years later, and I was in Birmingham, and that was when Facebook first started, and I was like, "Oh, there's that guy. I'm hungry. I'm gonna see if he wants to take me out to eat." So he was like, "Are you serious?" "Yes, hungry med student looking for food. You can take me." So that was how we ended up starting the date or whatever. And I remember saying like, "Say the grace, you need to say the grace." And he was looking at me so crazy. I was like, "You don't know how to say the grace?" And he was like, "No, we didn't grow up like that." And he was like, "Well, what am I supposed to say?" I was like, "Just talk, just say something." And he's still looking at me like I'm crazy. So I'm like, "Okay, this is awkward. I told you needed a little bit more Jesus." I told you this. He still didn't listen. But he had been going to church and stuff like that. But he was going to church, but having your own relationship is much different, and learning that. And so we began to date seriously, and I was like, "You need to pay your tithes." He's like, "I don't have enough money to pay my tithes." "Yes, you do. You need to pay your tithes." And he was like, "You have such crazy favor." He was like, "The things people call you about, the things people bless you with." He was like, "I don't get it." I was like, "It's because I pay my tithes. It's because I pay my tithes." So he started tithing, and he was like, "Oh my Lord, God really makes it stretch." I was like, "Right, because we're just wasting money anyway. If you look at it, you can do a little bit better with that." So it started off early in our marriage, like we're real competitive. So challenging him, like, "Yes, I did this," and he would do that, and he started to see the fruits of his labor. So he moved back to Birmingham, joined the church that we're at now. We go to the worship center, and it's just been great watching him do college ministry there, and getting out of his comfort zone. And now we pray every morning, always learning to pray, and just listening at him grow. And we have a prayer closet. We've been in this current house for about 2 years, and when we built I was like, I need a prayer closet. And the builder was like, we've never put a prayer closet in a house before. And I said, well, now you can advertise that you build prayer closets.
Right.
You build war rooms. And so he's like, okay. He's like, well, I went in there and they had all these shelves in there. I was like, if you don't get all this stuff out, I need these walls. So I got sticky notes all over the walls. Jay's got his wall. Zoe's got her wall. Anybody else got their wall. And he decorated and it's got lights and all of this in there. So it's such a sweet space, such a sacred space. And I go in there, Zoe goes in there, and then he goes in there. I'm like, where you been? He's like, I've been in the prayer class. I know, I hear you snoring. Wake up, you know. It's dark in there. It's dark in there. So he's like, adamant about getting in there more, and it's just a sweet space. So just to see him from not being able to say, a good grace to like now, laying at God's feet in that space, it's just awesome. It's been an awesome ordeal.
I kind of want you to speak into that a little bit because you were talking about, you talked to your husband and you kind of challenged him and you grew him. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of women are like, why won't my husband's so stubborn? Blah, 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 right? And sometimes we don't hear it. Mm-hmm. So maybe speak to the women out there who are listening. Like, how do you speak to your husband in such a way where, he feels loved and respected, but at the same time still wants to do the things that, that you care about the most? Because a lot of us guys, we care, but sometimes the delivery can make us...
It's all in your delivery.
Yeah, because sometimes it can make us, we're guys, so we get a little defensive or we can get... sometimes how if someone we get guarded. So how
see
do
it
you
as nagging.
Yeah, we see it. We see it sometimes the way that we don't want to see it, but it puts us in a position where we don't really want to do it, even though we want to, but we don't want to.
What you need to do.
Yeah, and so
I think the big thing, like you said, is not to nag, is not to belittle, is not to make him feel less of a man. I never did that. I always looked at it as, check my tone, because I fuss at work, but I'm very much a wife at home. Like I'm Dr. Dr. Johnson, here she comes. She got that look, but I'm nothing like that at home. So I am. So if I'm fussing at home, he looks down. He's like, "You still got your scrubs on? Take those scrubs off so I can have my wife." So I have to take a totally different approach with him. It's a loving approach. It's a gentle approach. I know his love language. His love language is words of affirmation. So every day I affirm him. You did that so good. Oh my gosh, you helped her get dressed. You did that. She matches so good. So I learned what he needed to hear, so he can hear me now. So I'm not tearing him down. I'm not speaking to him like he works for me. I'm affirming him. And when he does something that I'm like, we've been talking about, I'm like, oh my goodness, awesome. And then I let him, if I say something 3 months later, he's like, you know what I thought about? Da 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 da. And it was the same thing I said to you had that idea. Right. That was a great idea. Right. I don't need the credit. I just
and that's a principles of management as well.
Exactly. That's one of the, 10, like my book, 10 Commandments of the Working Wife. I'm like, you don't have to be right all the time. We just want to get to the final destination. So I know his love language. I know how he feels loved. And I'm not tearing him down. Loving him, encouraging him, and just affirming him. So he does whatever I think that he needs to do because he feels supported in it. You got to make him feel supported and not torn down. He doesn't want to be a little boy anymore. He's got a mama for that. Be his wife, be his equal, be his helpmate, and just affirm him or whatever your husband's love language is. Learn it. If you don't know it, figure it out, and then just practice it.
Yeah, great book. 5 love languages. We had to figure out that, so mine is words of affirmation, physical touch. Jamie's quality time and acts of service. So, I would be telling, babe, you look beautiful. Why don't you come on over here and, and she's like, oh, why don't you take out the trash and then sit on the couch and talk to me? I'm like, why don't we do that after? But, basically, if you're not speaking their language, then it's just like you're learning Russian. If you try to speak and you don't fully understand somebody's language, it's
you can say a lot of wrong things.
It's gibberish.
Yeah, I learned that in culture. So when I go to Eastern Europe quite often, and it's interesting because I could, people take me differently. I'll do something that just doesn't make sense. It could be offensive or it could be whatever, but the fact that they know I'm a foreigner gives me grace. Because they like, he probably didn't mean that. And so because of that, it actually softens the edge, and vice versa. Like whenever if you ever notice someone that's like a foreigner and they're talking to you or something, they say something that just is like, did you just really say that? But if you knew they're a foreigner, you kind of give them grace, and you say, well, maybe they didn't mean that. So you might ask another question. So what did you mean? Or can you say that again? Or something like that. And I wonder, why don't we do that to each other?
It's no open-ended conversations.
We assume something wrong. So like with foreigners or people we don't know, or when we know there's probably something that we don't get, we'll assume the good. But if it's someone that we know or someone that's familiar, we assume the bad. Why do we do that? And so,
I think that's how culturally we're groomed for that, to expect the worst. There's so many sayings, expect the worst, and that way if the best comes, you are already prepared. But that's not necessarily how we should do things. I think that's right. Grace, extending grace, like we've been given grace, is awesome. That's what we need to be doing more of.
Yeah.
Well, we're pretty much running out of time, so thank you, Dr. Cray. Is it Dr. Cray or Dr. Johnson?
It's Dr. Cree. It depends.
Dr. Cree.
They call me Dr. Cree, Dr. Johnson. They were calling me Dr. Trimble.
Actually, tell everybody what your full name
Okay,
is.
my
This is
full
where it's
name
come
is
from.
Ancrea Trimble Johnson. Ancrea is Indian. It means nomad traveler, which is perfect because I've gone all over.
You're all over the place. So she has 10 Commandments of a Working Wife. So if you want, you can just check it out. So tell the viewers like how they can find you or where they can check out your book.
Okay, you can find me on all social media platforms at Dr. Cree. Spell doctor out, DoctorKre. You can go to my website, www.drcree.com, and get all of the details. Get your tickets. We're taking sponsors, the whole nine.
So thank you for joining us. So if you ever want to check us out, you can also go to www.executiveline.com and visit our Facebook page, Living Life on Purpose.
Be sure to like and share. So if you were encouraged by this, make sure that your friends get encouraged as well. Thanks so much for watching.
Have a great day, and be sure to check us out 2 weeks from now.
Thank you.